Your past is like a roommate who refuses to move out. It eats your food, comments on your choices, brings up that embarrassing thing you did in 2015 during every conversation. You've asked it to leave. You've tried ignoring it. You've redecorated around it, but it's still there, taking up space in your head, charging rent in the form of your peace. And the worst part? You keep introducing it to new people. This is my past. It defines me. No wonder it won't leave. You keep giving it a lease renewal. And I want to talk to you today about why you keep doing that, why you keep signing that lease, why you keep letting something that's already over continue to run your present. Because here's the painful truth that nobody wants to hear. You're not stuck because of what happened to you. You're stuck because you've confused your history with your destiny. You've taken temporary events and turned them into permanent identity. I was abandoned became I'm unlovable. I failed once became I'm a failure. I was hurt became I'm broken. And this video isn't about positive thinking or pretending your past didn't happen. That's spiritual bypassing and it doesn't work. I'm not going to tell you to just let it go or move on like your trauma is a bag you can set down at the airport. That's insulting to what you've been through. This is about understanding the difference between remembering what happened and being imprisoned by what happened. There's a massive gap between those two things, and most people don't even know the gap exists. Every self-help guru tells you to let go or move on without explaining how. They treat your past like baggage you can just set down. But it's not baggage. It's a story you keep telling yourself, and the person listening most intently is you. You're both the narrator and the audience of a story that ended years ago, but somehow you're still watching reruns every single day. What I'm offering you today is different. It's a way to metabolize your past instead of being haunted by it, a way to carry wisdom without carrying weight. You're about to learn that freedom isn't about forgetting, it's about recontextualizing. And the story I'm about to share will show you exactly how. So let me tell you about a woman who carried a suitcase everywhere. I mean everywhere. To work, to dinner, to the grocery store, to bed. People would see her struggling with this massive, beat-up suitcase, and they'd ask, "Why are you carrying that? What's in there?" And she'd always give the same answer. "It's my past. I can't put it down. It's who I am." The suitcase was incredibly heavy. You could see it in the way she walked, the way her shoulders slumped, the way she'd have to rest every few minutes just to catch her breath. Inside that suitcase was every betrayal she'd ever experienced, every failure she'd ever endured, every cruel word that had ever been spoken to her. She'd packed it carefully over the years, organized by pain level. The heaviest items were at the bottom, those childhood wounds that had calcified into her foundation. The middle layer held relationship failures, professional disappointments, the medium-grade traumas. And at the top were the recent disappointments, still fresh, still tender. She carried this suitcase for years, decades actually, and over time it became part of her identity. She wasn't just a woman anymore. She was the woman with the suitcase, the woman with the past, the woman who'd been through things. And in some strange way, that suitcase gave her a sense of purpose, a role to play. It explained why she couldn't do certain things, why she stayed small, why she didn't take risks. The suitcase was both her burden and her excuse. One day she was exhausted, more exhausted than usual. She'd been carrying this thing for so long that exhaustion had become her baseline. But on this particular day, something broke. She sat down on a park bench, dropped the suitcase beside her, and just stared at it. And for the first time in years, she asked herself, "Why am I still doing this?" An old man sat down beside her. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at the suitcase, then looked at her, then looked back at the suitcase, and finally he said, "That must be exhausting." She started crying. Just those 4 words, and she completely broke down. Because nobody had acknowledged it before. Nobody had seen how tired she was. And through her tears, she said, "You have no idea, but I can't put it down. If I put it down, I'll forget what happened. And if I forget, it might happen again. This suitcase protects me. It reminds me to be careful, to guard myself, to never be that vulnerable again." The old man nodded slowly. He wasn't trying to fix her or convince her. He just sat there, present with her pain. And then he said, "Can I show you something?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook. It was worn, well used, the edges soft from years of handling. He said, "This is my suitcase. Same stuff as yours probably, maybe worse. But I learned something along the way. I learned that I don't need to carry the weight to remember the lesson." He opened the notebook and she leaned in. Inside were brief notes, just a line or two per page. Trusted the wrong person, learned discernment. Lost everything, learned resilience. Was betrayed, learned boundaries. Each entry was short, simple, wisdom extracted from pain. Light, portable, wisdom without weight. The old man looked at her suitcase again and said, "The thing you're carrying doesn't contain your past. It contains your unprocessed relationship with your past. You're not carrying memories, you're carrying emotional debt. And until you pay that debt by actually processing what happened, by actually learning from it instead of just endlessly reliving it, you'll keep lugging it around. You'll carry it to your grave if you let yourself." The woman stared at her suitcase. She'd never thought about it that way. She'd always believed she was carrying her past, carrying her memories, carrying proof of what she survived. But what if she was actually carrying her refusal to learn from it? What if the weight wasn't the events themselves, but her unwillingness to extract meaning from them? She asked him, "How do I process it? How do I turn this into that?" She pointed at his small notebook. The old man smiled. He said, "You stop being the victim of your story and you become the narrator. You stop asking, 'Why did this happen to me?' and you start asking, 'What did this teach me?' You stop replaying what happened, that endless loop of the worst moments, and you start writing what it meant, what you learned, who you became because of it. And then, this is the important part, you extract the wisdom and leave the weight." The woman went home that night and she did something she hadn't done in years. She opened the suitcase. She actually unzipped it and looked inside. And as she pulled out each item, each memory, each wound, she asked it a question she'd never asked before. What did you teach me? The abandonment she experienced as a child, what did that teach her? It taught her self-reliance. It taught her that she could survive on her own. It taught her resilience. The betrayal from her first love, what did that teach her? It taught her about red flags, about trusting her intuition, about the difference between love and manipulation. The job she lost unfairly, what did that teach her? It taught her about her own worth, about standing up for herself, about not tying her identity to external validation. One by one, she processed each item, not by minimizing the pain, not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by refusing to let the pain be meaningless. She had suffered. That was real. That was undeniable. But if she had suffered, she could at least let it make her wiser. She could at least extract something valuable from the experience. And as she wrote down these lessons in her own notebook, something shifted. The suitcase didn't get lighter. The memories didn't disappear, but she did. She got lighter because she realized she'd been carrying something she didn't need to carry. She wasn't carrying her past. She was carrying her refusal to learn from it. Now, let me tell you why this story matters to you. Because you're carrying a suitcase too. Maybe it's not a literal suitcase, but it's there. It's in the way you hesitate before taking risks. It's in the way you sabotage good things because you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's in the way you introduce yourself through your wounds, through your limitations, through everything that's happened to you instead of everything you've become because of it. And what if your past isn't a burden to escape, but a teacher you've been ignoring? What if freedom isn't about forgetting, but about finally actually learning? Let me tell you about the hardest conversation I ever had with myself. This is personal, this is real, and I'm sharing it because I think you need to hear it. I was sitting in my car at 2 in the morning in a grocery store parking lot, having what I can only describe as an existential breakdown. I just had another failed relationship, another pattern repeated, another version of the same wound reopening like clockwork. And I started screaming. I'm talking full volume, no holds barred, screaming at my dashboard like it owed me money. Why does this keep happening? Why am I cursed? Why can't I escape this? What is wrong with me? And then in the silence after the screaming, after I had exhausted myself, a thought arrived that changed everything. It came quietly, almost like a whisper. It said, "You're not cursed. You're loyal." I sat there confused. What does that even mean? And the thought continued. You're loyal to your wound. You're faithful to your narrative. You've built an entire identity around being damaged, and now you're unconsciously protecting that identity by recreating the conditions that confirm it. That hit me like a physical blow. Was I choosing this? Obviously not consciously. I didn't wake up every morning and think, you know what I'd love today? More pain. But was some part of me, some unconscious part, finding comfort in the familiar pain? Was I staying in the prison because it was the only home I knew? I started examining my patterns with brutal honesty. Every relationship I sabotaged right when it got good, right when someone actually saw me and loved me anyway. Every opportunity I self-destructed right before success, right before I'd have to step into a bigger version of myself. Every moment I'd chosen the painful familiar over the scary unknown. And I realized something that made me sick to my stomach. I wasn't afraid of getting hurt again. I was afraid of being okay. Because if I was okay, if I healed, if I actually moved forward, I'd have to let go of the story I've been telling myself for 20 years. The story that said, I'm the person bad things happen to. I'm the victim. I'm the damaged one. I'm the one who doesn't get the happy ending. That identity had become comfortable. Not pleasant, not joyful, but comfortable in the way that anything familiar becomes comfortable. It explained everything. It excused everything. It gave me a role to play in every situation. When things went wrong, I could say, see, this is what always happens to me. When things went right, I could dismiss it as a fluke, an anomaly, something that wouldn't last. And letting go of that identity felt like death. Because who would I be without my wounds defining me? If I wasn't the damaged one, the hurt one, the one who'd been through things, then who was I? That identity had been my compass for so long that the idea of navigating without it felt terrifying. Here's what I learned that night in the parking lot. And this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you today. The prison isn't your past. The prison is your identity's attachment to victimhood. And the scariest part of freedom isn't facing what happened. You've already faced that 1,000 times in your ruminations and your midnight spirals. The scariest part of freedom is facing who you'd be if you stopped using what happened as an excuse. I'm not saying you're making up your pain. I'm not saying your wounds aren't real. They're real. They're valid. What happened to you matters. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a person who experienced pain and you became pain itself. You fused with it. You merged with it. And now you don't know where you end and the trauma begins. So how do you separate yourself from your story? How do you remember without being imprisoned by the memory? Let me give you another way to see this. Imagine you're driving a car, but you're doing it while staring exclusively in the rearview mirror. You're trying to navigate forward, trying to get somewhere, but your eyes are locked on what's behind you. Every decision you make is based on what you're leaving, not where you're going. Every turn is a reaction to what's already passed. Eventually, you crash. Of course you crash. You can't drive forward while looking backward. It's physically impossible. But here's what you tell yourself after the crash. See, I knew it. Bad things always happen to me. I'm cursed. The universe is against me. You don't realize the crash happened because of where you were looking, not because of some cosmic conspiracy against your happiness. Your past is the rearview mirror. It's there for a reason. It gives you context, helps you learn, shows you where you've been so you can understand how far you've come. But it's small for a reason too, because it's not meant to be your primary focus. It's not designed to guide you forward. The windshield is huge. That's where you're supposed to be looking. Forward, at the road ahead, at possibility, at the horizon, at everything that hasn't happened yet, but could happen if you'd stop crashing into things because you refuse to look where you're going. So what are you looking at right now? The windshield or the rearview mirror? And be honest, because most of you are lying to yourselves. You say you're moving forward, but you're spending 18 hours a day reliving what's behind you. Now, let me break down some core truths you need to understand. First truth, your past is not your identity. It's your history. There's a massive difference between those two things. History is what happened. Identity is who you are. When you fuse the two together, when you merge them into one thing, you trap yourself in a story that ended years ago. You're not a person who was abandoned. You're a person who experienced abandonment and survived it. You're not a person who failed. You're a person who attempted something, didn't get the result you wanted, and lived to try again. See the difference? One is an identity, one is an experience. Identities are permanent. Experiences are events.
Events end, identities once adopted run your entire life. Second truth, healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about changing your relationship with it. You can't unhappen what happened. I wish you could, you wish you could, but we can't rewind time and we can't rewrite history. The events are permanent, but your interpretation of those events, that's flexible. That can change. That can evolve. You can remember without re-experiencing. You can acknowledge without being defined. You can honor what happened without letting it dictate what happens next. The event is carved in stone. Your relationship with the event is written in pencil. Third truth, victimhood is seductive because it absolves responsibility. And I need you to really hear this without getting defensive. If you're the victim, you don't have to change. You don't have to grow. You don't have to risk. You don't have to try. You get to stay small and call it safety. You get to avoid challenges and call it self-protection. You get to live a half life and blame it on circumstances. But victimhood is the most expensive identity you can possibly adopt. It costs you your future. It costs you your potential. It costs you the life you could be living if you weren't so committed to explaining why you can't. Fourth truth, freedom comes from authorship, not amnesia. You become free not by forgetting your story, but by rewriting it. Not the facts, those stay. The facts are the facts. But the meaning, the interpretation, the role you play in it. You shift from this happened to me and it destroyed me to this happened to me and it taught me. From I am broken because of this to I am wiser because of this. From why me to what now. Same story, different narrator, different meaning, different future. Fifth truth, your past is a teacher, not a jailer. Every wound carries wisdom if you're willing to learn. Every betrayal teaches boundaries. Every failure teaches resilience. Every loss teaches appreciation. But you have to be willing to learn. And learning requires you to stop being a passive victim and become an active student. So here's the practice. Here's what you actually do with all of this. First, the reframe exercise. Take one painful memory, just one. Write it down exactly as you've always told it. I was betrayed. I was abandoned. I was hurt. I was damaged. Get it all out. Don't hold back. Now rewrite it from the perspective of a teacher. What did this experience teach you? I learned that not everyone is trustworthy, and that's okay, because now I'm more discerning. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was because I survived something I didn't think I could survive. I learned what I will and won't accept in relationships because now I have data about what destroys me. Same event, completely different relationship. You're not changing what happened, you're changing what it means. Second practice, the separation practice. This is huge. When your past intrudes, when those memories come flooding in uninvited, say out loud, that happened to me. It is not me. Repeat it like a mantra. Your mind will resist. It's been fused with the story for so long that separation feels dangerous. But this practice creates space between event and identity, and space is where freedom lives. Third practice, the wisdom extraction. For every wound you carry, ask yourself, what did this teach me that I can use? Write it down, make a list. You're not minimizing the pain. You're not saying it was worth it or it happened for a reason or any of that toxic positivity garbage. You're simply refusing to let pain be meaningless. If you suffered, at least let it make you wiser. Fourth practice, the future self letter. This one is powerful. Write a letter from your 80-year-old self to your current self. Imagine you're at the end of your life looking back. What does that older, wiser version of you want you to know about the past you're carrying? I guarantee they'll say something like, stop wasting your one precious life being loyal to your wounds. Stop giving your present to your past. I wish I learned this sooner. Fifth practice, the windshield focus. Every single time you catch yourself ruminating on the past, physically look forward. Look at what's in front of you, your coffee cup, your computer screen, the road, the sky, and say out loud, this is where I live now, not back there. Here, now. You have to train your brain like you train a puppy. It wants to run back to the past because that's familiar territory. Your job is to gently, consistently redirect it to the present, over and over, 1,000 times a day if necessary. So here's what we uncovered today. Your past isn't holding you hostage. You're holding yourself hostage on behalf of your past. You learn that you've been carrying weight instead of wisdom, that you've confused your history with your identity, and that freedom doesn't come from forgetting, but from reframing, from becoming the narrator instead of the victim of your own story. Here's your mantra, and I want you to feel this in your bones. My past is not my prison. It's my proof. Proof that I survived. Proof that I'm stronger than what tried to break me. Proof that I'm still here, still worthy, still becoming. The door's been open this whole time. You just had to realize you were allowed to walk through it. You didn't need permission from anyone. You just needed to stop being loyal to a story that's keeping you small. If this video cracked something open in you, if you felt even a sliver of permission to finally stop being defined by what happened years ago, hit that like button. Comment and tell me, what's one piece of wisdom you're extracting from your past today? What's one lesson you've been refusing to learn? And subscribe, because we're all learning to set ourselves free here, one story at a time, one reframe at a time, one small act of authorship at a time. You're not broken. You never were. You were just holding yourself hostage on behalf of something that already ended. Walk through the door. Start today, right now, this moment. Put down the suitcase, pick up the notebook, extract the wisdom, leave the weight. I'll see you in the next one.